We might have had off for Thanksgiving break, but Philadelphia sports teams definitely did not. The Eagles won two very close games. The Sixers just keep on winning. And the Flyers, well, I guess the best way to put it is they just keep doing whatever it is that the Flyers do. We'll break down all three of those teams and more here on this episode of Sports Talk Philadelphia. Welcome back to Sports Talk Philadelphia. Thank you so much for joining us. As usual, I'm your host, Aidan, and I'm joined by my usual panel this week. Starting on my immediate left is Shane Nolan. Shane, how are you?
Doing good.
And then in the middle, we got Riley Kavchuk. Riley, how are you?
I'm great.
And at the end, we've got Mike Holden for his second to last episode. Mike, how are you doing?
After about 10 heart attacks on Sunday, I'm pretty good, but Eagles won.
Yeah, the Eagles did win, and I did hear that heart attack joke a lot more than I think I would have liked to. But hey, a win is a win, even though this one was very, very close. It came down to overtime. The Eagles won on a touchdown, 37-34 in OT. Jalen Hurts, 18 for 31, 200 yards, 5 total TDs with 1 interception. DeAndre Swift, 14 carries for 80 yards. Devontae Smith, 7 receptions, 106 yards and a TD. And Jake Elliott with a clutch 59-yard field goal to tie the game. Mike, what were your thoughts about this game?
I mean, at the end of the day, like I always say, a win's a win. That was probably one of the greater wins, this season. But the first half was ugly. It was so ugly, just like it was against Kansas City. It was the same score going into the half. It was just a bad half. Brian Johnson, again, the play calling was not great, but they figured it out. Hurts figured it out, and like we always do, I feel like he's turning. I hear a lot of talk this week, kind of like Brady, like you can trust Brady. You're kind of turning into Hurts. You can trust him at the end of the game, and you saw that against the Bills. You saw that in the game-winning drive. He got them to score, even in regulation when they got them to get Elliott to even get a 60-yard field goal. I mean, there was just a lot going on, a lot of emotions that game, but it was a good win, and they really needed that win.
Yeah, Hurts certainly is showing that clutch gene. This is the second time in a row in 2 games where the Eagles got off to a super slow start, and in the second half, Hurts turned it up and was able to lead to win. Riley, when you have a quarterback like that, you have to feel not only confident as a fan, but as a guy on that team, knowing that when your team is down in a hole, that you have a guy that can come up clutch like that.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of pushing off what Mike said, it's definitely someone that they're more leaning towards trusting more, and we definitely saw game. He saw what needed to happen. He pulled through with the idea, scored a touchdown, not just any touchdown, the game-winning touchdown. And he's just someone the team can trust at this point on in the season.
Yeah, so Jalen Hurts definitely is clutch. Mike, I don't know if I've seen a kicker as clutch as Jake Elliott either on the Eagles. I mean, Justin Tucker's up there for being that clutch, but the fact that Elliott's even in the same sentence is truly quite amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think as Eagles fans, we've seen this greatness for a while, and I think there comes a conversation that I know, like, we're younger, we've grown up with Elliott, but I think there's a conversation, we grew up with Akers too. I mean, I think there's a conversation that Elliott might surpass him. I mean, Elliott, time after time, as a rookie in the Super Bowl, clutch kick, time after time, this season, last season, I mean, it's time after time with him. He makes big kicks, and not just big kicks. I mean, 60-yard field goals in the rain. I mean, it's huge. It's huge. Obviously, David Akers is one of the best, but I think Jake Elliott might overtake him by the end of his career.
Yeah, that's a conversation I've heard on other stations as well, so I don't think it's crazy to throw out there. The Eagles' defense did struggle a bit, but they did come up with a couple key plays as well. Jalen Carter had a huge block field goal. Brandon Graham playing for his franchise record game, most games played, actually passed David Akers. 2 tackles and 1 sack in this game, and James Rodriguez came away with an interception. Riley, I know that Jalen Carter has sort of slowed up a little bit, but that block field goal was massive for the game. Yeah,
Carter didn't necessarily deliver the sack, which is what we're used to at this point, but did come up with 3 pressures and then 2 defensive stops, 80% of the team's defense snaps. And then he also played a season high of 76 snaps this week. So seeing that is something you want to see for a good NFL's team's defense.
Yeah, definitely part of the reason that he played so many snaps is you saw injuries to Fletcher Cox and Jordan Davis as well. The defense is still a little bit beat up. They're getting healthier slightly, but obviously Nakobe Dean is still out. So, Mike, this defense although they're not completely healthy, they're still making plays when they have to, even though it's not to the extent that we saw last year with them.
Yeah, the only thing I will say with them with the last game, they were on the field so much. I think time of possession was, I think it was 40 minutes to like 26, and that's just like, you can't have that. The defense is just going to be tired, and they did. I mean, I think they gave up 500 yards. But when you're out there for that long, it's going to happen. But like we've talked about, they made big plays. They made them when they had to, and it seems like that's just what they do. And Josh Allen played probably one of the best games of his career, and he still lost. So I mean, they played. Did they give up a lot of yards? Yes, but the offense did not put them in a good position in the first half. But they stepped up, and in the end, they won.
Yeah, a few of those runs that Josh Allen had, he just looked possessed almost. So the fact the Eagles were still able to come away with a win with Allen having a game like that, huge momentum for them. And when you look at the standings, it shows. I mean, the Eagles right now are 10-1, have the best record in football, 2 games up on the Dallas Cowboys, who also had a great win on Thanksgiving. And then the Giants have somehow passed the Commanders, winning 2 games against them this year. So now the Commanders are in last. Riley, I'm going to go with you first. Obviously, you look at the Eagles standings, it looks really, really good. I'm sort of surprised, though, that the Commanders and Giants have struggled as much as they have, especially the Commanders.
Yeah, and people has kind of predicted that in the beginning of the season, that's mostly a team they're going to see develop from where they are and struggle where they are. Where the Eagles are right now, it's amazing. Other teams who aren't Eagles fans, other fans who they just don't expect it. They think something's up with that. But there's really nothing else that we could say, but we have a good developed franchise team.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very, very well-rounded team. Basically all facets of the ball, they are a strong unit. When you look at other teams like the Cowboys and 49ers, Mike, which are the teams that the Eagles right now are competing with for that first spot, you have to feel pretty confident going these games. I mean, I know you beat Dallas once already, and you've got San Francisco coming up, but they've gone through the gauntlet of their schedule 3-0 at this point, which is huge.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing last year was the whole Mickey Mouse schedule this, Mickey Mouse that, and just how it was such an easy schedule. This year, this is the hardest stretch, and they're 3-0 so far. I mean, they're proving time after time again that they know how to win games. And honestly, beating that Bills team on Sunday was huge because it gives you a 2-game advantage over both the Niners and Cowboys. If you do end up losing one of those games, you still have that cushion. So that game was so huge to win. But yeah, I think we're in good shape. I think we all expected us to be here, but nobody else did. And I think we're in good shape for the first seed. But still, Sunday's a huge game to win, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, not to knock the teams that are still left on the schedule, because you do have the 2 really tough games in the Cowboys 49ers, like I said. The Seahawks also, though, Riley, I think that could be a bit of a sneaky game. I know that they got blown out on Thanksgiving, but that's still a team you're going to Seattle. That's not going to be as easy, I think, as a lot of fans think it is.
Yeah, definitely not. And it's going to be kind of hard to, not just as fans watching the game, but they have been, the past couple games, there has been, a tough, start to it. It took them a while to really get their momentum going and then winning the game. So right now there's really no possible prediction for the Seahawks team.
Yeah, that will be a very interesting to see. But as I said, next week, tough game against the 49ers. Last year, the Eagles beat the 49ers 31-7 in the NFC Championship game. 49ers right now 8-3. They were second, I believe now they're first that Seattle lost, but still, or second in the NFC, yeah, but they're first in the NFC West. Christian McCaffrey, 939 rushing yards, 16 total TDs. The dude is a beast, Mike, and it's going to be very, very tough to shut him down, because if you shut him down running, he can just be a receiver.
Yeah, I mean, the dude is just insane. He is so good. And for me, when it comes down to this game, I know I don't want to say one player, but I think if you don't have Lane Johnson, I don't see them winning this game. I mean, you have Chase Young and Bosa coming off the edges. Driscoll held up his end for the most part on Sunday. But if you don't have Johnson, I think that's going to prove big, because Hurts is just not going to have any time. But yeah, they have so many weapons. McCaffrey, Ayuk, Debo. It's going to be a tough game. It's going to be different than last season, because obviously Purdy's going to be healthy. But we'll see what happens. But, like I said, they beat them last year. They look good against the Bills. I think this is the game where they put a complete game finally.
Yeah, and before we quickly wrap up, Riley, I'll start with you and then Mike. Do you guys have score predictions for this week?
24-17 Eagles.
Ooh, close.
Yeah, I think 27 17. I think it's going to be the first complete game, like I said.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it would be very, very good to see them have a complete win against a team as good as the 49ers. The Miami win so far is probably the best win of the season. Yeah, they struggled a bit in the first half, but they still put up 17 points, and at the end, you ran away with the game. I'm going to go with another close game. I'm thinking like 23-16, 23-17. It's going to be close. I think the 49ers are a very, very good team. I do think the Eagles still pull this one at home before they go on the road against Seattle and Dallas. We're now going to go to the 76ers, who, as I said, are still having a very, very good season. They did not make it into the quarterfinals in the play-in tournament, but they still have a 12-5 record. Lost to the Cavs and Timberwolves in back-to-back games, but they did beat the Thunder 127-123, and they demolished the Lakers 138-94. And Riley, I want to start with that Lakers game because when you look at the way that they played, it's LeBron's worst loss of his entire career. Like, that's just crazy.
Yeah, it was definitely good to see, not just LA, also Oklahoma, two teams that people don't usually expect the Sixers to beat, and then watching them beat, especially by a 44-point blowout. That's definitely something that Lakers fans do not want to see, but that's great for Philly. Like, it's great seeing that.
Yeah, and Mike, it was really good to see against Oklahoma City. It's a good young team that are playing very, very well. So for the Sixers to bounce back after back-to-back losses, you get knocked out of the play-in tournament, but now they look better than I think. Like, when you lose two games like that, it's good to see a bounce back.
Yeah, OKC is definitely a young team. Lakers, I mean, that Lakers game was a huge win to get. But Embiid and Maxey are proving to be probably one of the best duos in the league. And I mean, I know all these years with Embiid, would it have been Fultz, would it have been Simmons, would it have been Harden? But now I think it's Maxey, and it's going to be Embiid and Maxey. But I still do think they're missing another piece to really get them over the top, the Celtics and the Bucks, because I think they're a good team, but I still don't think they're good enough to get over the top.
Yeah, for a lot of years, it was always talked about finding a big three. Well, with Maxey and Embiid, you clearly have a big two, like Mike said. When you just look at the stats, it's amazing. Embiid's averaging over 32 points, over 11 rebounds per game. But Maxey's also up there in points, 26.4 points per game, and also 6.8 assists per game. Riley, when you have two guys like that, it almost feels like you can't lose when they're on the court.
Yeah, it's not unusual for Embiid to get over 30 points per game. You should expect that from an MVP at least. But Maxey, not to throw any shade towards James Harden, but now that he's gone, Maxey definitely gets to show out his full potential. So watching him play, you can definitely see new improvement we didn't see last season. He dropped 50 points. For someone being so young, that's incredible.
Yeah, and Mike, when you look at the way that they've played on the court together, I think that last year it was sort of trying to figure out the big three between Maxey, Harden, and Embiid. I know you said you want another piece, but it almost feels like if you get a superstar, which is what the Sixers were kind of hoping for with these two, it's just going to clog up the system the way that happened last year.
Yeah, I mean, you can't, it has to be someone who fits with the team. And does it have to be an absolute superstar? No, but maybe a guy like, I don't know, I think we mentioned before, like OG Anunoby, or just someone, I think like a wing. I like Tobias Harris, but I just don't think they just need someone to complement that too. And like you said, there might not be somebody out there like that. You might have to get rid of his contract, which I think this is his last year, but I don't know what's out there right now. But I mean, hopefully getting Kelly Oubre will give them a spark too. But I think those pieces they got from the Harden trade, I think, they're working. I mean, Morris is contributing, Batum's contributing. I mean, they got some pieces from that, so we'll see what they can do with that.
I was going to mention Kelly Oubre because not having him on the court really hurt in the Timberwolves game when Embiid wasn't playing. So, Riley, as great as Maxey is, he clearly can't be the type of guy that can just win on his own.
Yeah, definitely not. I feel like once Kelly Oubre, that accident happened, I feel like it was more of like an every season thing we saw when we're going so good and then it's all the way starting to go down. And then that's kind of what we saw once Kelly Oubre was no longer playing with us. And they still found substitutes, people to put in to play for him. But I still feel like if we had him, it would be a lot more beneficial to our team.
Yeah, definitely losing Oubre was a huge loss for the Sixers. Thankfully, getting Embiid back after a couple of games of rest, it shows that they're playing really well. And when you look at the standings, it's not where I was expecting them to be at this point, but that's because there's a couple teams like the Magic. I did not see the Magic having this good of a run. Yes, they have a lot of really good young players, but so for them to be 12-5 tied with the Sixers, really, really big. The Knicks are playing really well again. I think the most surprising team to me is the Pacers, and we have a little bit of a segment for Fast Five on the Pacers later. But Mike, when you look at the standings, you got Celtics, Bucks, where I was expecting to be the Magic's going to make it a little bit more complicated for the Sixers for sure.
Yeah, they're a good young team. I mean, they got Paolo Banchero down there who's really, looking like he's turning into a superstar. And they got other guys. I mean, they got the Wagner brothers down there too. And I think Fultz is even playing. He's coming back. So they got a young team. But I still think the Sixers shouldn't have any problems with going over them in the standings. But like I said, I do not see them, unless some type of big moves made, I do not see them overtaking the Celtics or Bucks unless a big injury happens to one of the teams.
Yeah, and we're still very early into the season, so I'm not trying to look at the standings and say that means anything. But right now, if the season were to end, which again, it's not, so don't worry about it, but the Knicks would be playing them. And I'm interested because of the fact that the Sixers don't really have a superstar guard. What do you think, Riley, that they're going to do with a guy like if they play Jalen Brunson in the playoffs, if you play Jimmy Butler? Who do you have defending him in that situation?
I feel like they're strong. Back to what I was saying, hopefully by that point, Kelly Oubre could be in. He was a good defender. Jaden Springer has been showing some good defensive blocks recently. I feel like Nick Nurse's rotation, how he's been playing them, has been beneficial going forward now. So I feel like if they keep rotating in the early of the season, then by the time it gets later on to that point, if we have to face that point, then Nick Nurse would have a idea of who to put there, when to put there, etc.
So, I mean, at this point, we're now past Thanksgiving break, so this is when people start looking at the standings at least a little bit more. The Sixers didn't make it to the play-in quarterfinals, like I said. Mike, I know that this is a new tournament, so it doesn't have a ton of history and stuff, but still that part hurt a little bit for the Sixers, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been nice to maybe get into it, but personally, as a Sixers fan, it's not the end of the world to me. But it would have been nice. I mean, it's the thing. But if you look at the teams who made the tourney, I mean, I think half the teams really weren't teams that were supposed to be good. I think it was the Pacers, Pelicans, I forget who else. But, I mean, it would have been nice to get in, but they didn't get in, so now we'll just move on, focus on the rest of the season. But, yeah, I think I do like it. They've been good. They've been fun games to watch, and I'm excited to see the tournament in Vegas in, I think, next week?
Yeah, next week, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's a very quick tournament. I think it is very cool to see it, and I agree that there's a lot of teams that won that you weren't expecting to. I do think that the Sixers were very, very competitive through it. It is unfortunate that they didn't win their bracket just because it looked like it was a very winnable division. I do think that the Cavs have a very, very good young squad. I'm not surprised that they beat the Sixers, really. A little bit surprised about the Pacers, but again, that's a team that we are going to get into a little bit later because first, we are going to talk about the Philadelphia Flyers, who, as I said in the opener, very interesting team to talk about because they're not great, but they're also not terrible because, as you see, they beat the Golden Knights 4-1, beat the Blue Jackets 5-2. Golden Knights win was awesome. Then they lost to the Islanders, lost to the Rangers, beat the Islanders again, and then lost to the Hurricanes after beating them a little while ago. Shane, what can you make of this team that is just all over the place?
They play hard, is what they do. They play hard for John Tortorella, and they play scrappy hockey. That's kind of John Tortorella's coaching style. And the defense this year has been, nobody expected this, but has been really good this year. From what they were last year to this year, they don't have Provorov anymore. Travis Sanheim has stepped up this year. He's been one of the best defensemen in the league, probably. Defensively, he's been chipping in offensively as well. And just a couple numbers for the defense. They rank second in expected goals against per game. Their scoring chances against is second, and percentage of shot against blocked, they're ranked first in the league. So that's pretty good. Yeah,
one of the things that I noticed in the Golden Knights game is that they actually scored on the power play. That's something that they've really struggled with this year and in past years as well, and something that the big complaint has. So, Shane, if they can fix this power play, which is one of their biggest weaknesses, and it's really no longer their defense, like you said, I think that you could see a more complete hockey team.
No, you can, because a lot of the games, they've had about 5 or 6 power plays in which they didn't score on any of them. And it's if they were to score on those power plays that they had, they'd probably be at least close to the Rangers in the top of the division. And that's something that they need to fix. And sometimes when they get a power play, it's can we just cancel out the power play and honestly put them on the penalty kill? Because they're better on the penalty kill. It seems like they're scoring more in the penalty kill than what they are on the power play.
Yeah, and I've noticed that too, and it's almost insane that seems to be the result of it. They play almost harder when they're down a man than when they're up a man, which I don't really know how that makes sense, but that's just what seems to be happening, like you said. When you look at the standings too, it shows how scrappy this team's been. Right now they're third in the standings, so right now they do technically have a playoff spot. And again, very early in their season, so don't read too much into it yet. But they are competing with teams like the Capitals and Islanders, which have better teams in my opinion, and they're only a couple of wins behind the Hurricanes and Rangers, who are the top 2 teams in the Metro standings. So Shane, when you look at it, they have a very, very good shot of not just being a wild card team, but really competing for the Metro top 3 spots.
Yeah, no, they do. And, I mean, a lot of these games they played against, especially the good teams like the Rangers, the Golden Knights, they've been close games. They played close games against the good teams. And then you see, like, the Blue Jackets, they won 5-2. They kind of blow out the bad teams. But, yeah, and then the thing with the Rangers and Islanders, they played against 2 of the top goaltenders in the league, Ilya Sorokin for the Islanders and Igor Shesterkin against the Rangers. And both of them are top 2 in save percentage against the Flyers. So they do have the Flyers' numbers. So those games were a little tough, but they did beat the Islanders in a shootout the other night, 1-0. So there's that.
And when you look at the way the games have been, they've been really close, but they also haven't been that high of scoring. And that shows the progression of Carter Hart back to the player that he used to be. And I think, Shane, when you look at it that way, Flyers fans do have a lot to be hopeful for. And the fact they're getting that goalkeeper that they were hoping back in 2020 would be the franchise goalkeeper.
Yeah, they do, because he's been very good this year. Obviously, we talked about the defense. They have a lot to do with it as well. But not just Carter Hart, but also Samuel Ersson. I know he got off to a rough start to the season, but he's been a pretty good. Ever since then, he's been a pretty good backup for them. So yeah, the goaltending has a lot to do with it, but also the defense keeping them in games.
Yeah, and you didn't mention that Blue Jackets win. We talked about it a couple weeks ago when they lost to San Jose Sharks, which was the Sharks' first win. The loss to a team the Flyers need to beat if they want to be aggressive. When they beat the Blue Jackets, which is the worst team in the Metro, that's a very, very good progression for a team that was struggling against really bad teams.
Yeah, no, it is, because a lot of times, especially last year, they weren't winning against teams that were bad. And back to the San Jose game, I mean, they went up against Mackenzie Blackwood, who was the goalie of the New Jersey Devils for a couple years, and they always have a certain type of goaltender that has their numbers, and he's one of those who has the Flyers' numbers. So it's just some certain goalies have just a team where they play really, really, really good against, and he's one of them. So that had a lot to factor into that.
Yeah, so it is very good to see the Flyers where they're at. It's great to see the Sixers where they're at, and the Eagles are the top team in football right now. So a lot of good things happening in Philadelphia sports. Again, the Flyers are a team that are going to be scrappy. They're going to win games that maybe they shouldn't. They're going to lose games sometimes that they should win. But that's sometimes what happens to teams that you're going through a rebuild. So hopefully they can get a little bit more consistency, but still very good to see that they are third right now in the Metro. We are now going to go into Fast Five, and we're going to start on something that happened 2 weeks ago, almost right after we shot this show. Aaron Nola has re-signed with the Phillies for a 7-year, $177 million contract. Shane, what are your thoughts?
It's a good deal. I mean, before the season started, they were talking he wanted $200 million, which is probably going to be a little bit too much for him. But essentially you had the Atlanta Braves and Dodgers who were reported in on him and actually offered him more money, but he decided to take the deal with the Phillies because he wanted to stay here for the rest of his career. I do think that maybe the year's a little bit too much. That's the only thing where I probably have something with it, but it's a good signing for the Phillies.
Yeah, the years are a lot, and something that I said before the season started when they were talking about renegotiation with Reese and Aaron, it's really easy to get a first baseman to substitute for a guy that can hit but can't really field. Bryce Harper has shown that he can field. It's hard to get an elite level pitcher on any type of contract. Nola shows that he can be that, so it's good that the Phillies re-signed him in my opinion. We're now going to go to Mike. We saw a bunch of coaches get fired in the last month. Frank Reich was the most recent one to get fired for the Carolina Panthers. What coaches do you think are now on the chopping block?
Yeah, I think the first one for me is probably Brandon Staley from the Chargers. They're 4-7 so far this year. They're last in the division. I think they just have way too much talent, to be doing this year. I mean, you have a franchise quarterback in Justin Herbert. You have one of the best running backs in Austin Eckler. You have one of the best wide receivers in Keenan Allen. I mean, you just have so much talent there, and they're just losing games that they probably shouldn't be losing. But Brandon Staley, I think he is next. But there's also, there's a lot of coaches that could be next. I think another one could be maybe Ron Rivera. But I think with that, I think it's Eric Bieniemy taking over his role. But I think the next one up would be Brandon Brandon Staley, just because the Chargers are 4-7 and definitely not exceeding expectations.
Yeah, and this has sort of been an MO for Staley of losing games that they're supposed to be winning. We'll see if the Chargers can eventually fix that. We're going to go back to Shane. The NHL has a couple really, really good teams. Which one do you think is the best?
To me, it's the New York Rangers. They're just playing good all around hockey. They have one of the top goaltenders in the league. They've been doing it without their top defenseman, Adam Fox, and they were missing Igor Shesterkin for a couple games. And also, a lot has to do with it, two of their young guys stepping up, Kaapo Kakko and Alexi Lafreniere. I mean, these are two guys who were no-shows kind of last season, and they've been stepping up this season, and that's been part of the reason why the Rangers have been the best team.
You know, when the Rangers made it to the finals a couple years ago, those were like the top guys on them. And they did regress, as Shane said. They're now going back to where they were. The Bruins also, after last year's historic run, still up there in the Atlantic standings. They're a team that you're going to have to look out for as well, even though they did collapse in the playoffs last year against the Panthers. So there's a lot of really, really good top teams, and it's really nice to talk about the Flyers among one of them. So hopefully it will stay like that. We're now going to go to Riley with the in-season tournament. As I said, we're going to get back to the Pacers, which are doing now. The Lakers and Pacers are the only teams to finish 4-0 in pool play. What are your takeaways from that?
All right, so I'm not so surprised that the Lakers got into it. They didn't play the hardest of teams, and there was probably more luck in that. But for the Pacers, their best player is probably Tyrese Haliburton. I mean, we have the best Tyrese in the league, but Tyrese Haliburton definitely shows out for them. And I also think the Sixers could have been better if they had more home advantage and not that bright red court.
Yeah, that court definitely was a little bit of an eyesore for some fans. When I heard about Tyrese Haliburton scoring 50 on us, basically if your name is Tyrese and you're playing the NBA, you have a shot of putting up a lot really, really good games. So yeah, it was interesting to see the Pacers win that one again. They were going against the Cavs, Pistons, Sixers. So it was good to see a new team sort of come up. The last thing we're going to talk about is the Pac-12 is officially ending this week after the Pac-12 championship between Oregon and Washington. Most of the teams are going to go over to 3 different conferences. For me, being a Big Ten fan, it was always really fun seeing the Big Ten play against the Pac-12 in the Rose Bowl. One of my, not necessarily favorite moments, but the moment that sticks out to me in the Rose Bowl, I'm a big Penn State fan. That loss to USC with Sam Darnold leading the Trojans back against the Nittany Lions broke my heart at the time, but looking back on it, moments like that is what made the Rose Bowl. It's what made the Pac-12. When you look at the amount of Heisman Trophy winners they had, when you look at the great quarterbacks that conference put out, to take away from that and move them, and especially Stanford and Cal going to the Atlantic Coastal Conference, where their new games are going to be against Florida State and Clemson, it just doesn't feel the same, and we're definitely losing one of the top eras of college football. So hopefully, and I'm sure we will, see a great game between Washington and Oregon this week, and that will be a great wrap-up for what has been an amazing conference. That's all for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. As always, check us out on social media at SportsTalk LTV on Facebook and Instagram. Instagram and Twitter. Thank you so much for watching, guys. We will be back for one more episode for Christmas break, so make sure to check us out next week. Thanks for watching, and as always, go Birds.